Lyra Kalin had learned long ago that the back row was safest. Not because it offered protection, quite the opposite, but because it meant fewer eyes, watching when she inevitably failed to meet the standards expected of a warrior. Species she didn't belong to, the Kryn cubs, filled the training hall with their usual aggressive energy, their metallic scales catching the harsh overhead lights as they practiced combat formations. At 8 cycles old, they already stood taller than most adult humans, their clawed hands capable of rending steel. Lyra sat cross-legged on the cold floor, her soft skin and fragile frame a stark contrast to the armored children surrounding her. She was the only human in the Imperial Cub training program. A political necessity, a symbol of Earth's integration into the galactic dominion, a mistake according to most. Ravik circled the room with predatory grace, his scarred face twisted in perpetual disapproval. The cub leader had made his contempt for Lyra clear from day one. Humans were weak. Humans were prey. Humans had no place among warriors. Formation Theta 9. Ravik's voice cracked like a whip. The cubs moved in synchronized chaos, their movements brutal and efficient. Lyra scrambled to follow, her smaller stature making her clumsy by comparison. She could feel Ravik's eyes burning into her back. The cubs didn't seem to mind her presence. In fact, they had adopted a strange protectiveness toward her over the past months. When she struggled with the weight of the training weapons, smaller cubs would quietly position themselves to help bear the load. When the combat exercises became too violent, they formed a buffer around her. She thought it was pity. She didn't understand predator behavior. Kalin, Ravik's snarl made her flinch. Front and center, now. The room fell silent. 30 pairs of reptilian eyes tracked her movement as she walked to the center of the training mat. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This wasn't standard protocol. Ravik towered over her, his lips curling back to reveal rows of serrated teeth. You've been coddled long enough, human. It's time you learned what real consequence feels like. He struck without warning, his clawed hand catching her across the face. The impact sent her sprawling, blood filling her mouth. The metallic taste mixed with fear as she looked up at him. Get up, he hissed. Defend yourself or I'll teach you why prey species die first in war. Lyra's hand shook as she tried to rise. This wasn't training. This was something else entirely. She could see it in his eyes, the cold calculation, the cruel satisfaction. He'd been waiting for an excuse. I said, get up. Ravik's boot connected with her ribs, driving the air from her lungs. Then something shifted in the room. The first growl came from Vex, a small cub who sat beside Lyra every session. It was a low warning sound that Lyra had never heard from the usually playful youngling. Then another cub joined in. Then another. Within seconds, the entire chamber vibrated with 30 voices raised in a primal challenge. Ravik froze, his predatory instincts finally recognizing the danger. But recognition came too late. The cubs moved as one, a coordinated pack assault that their instructor had ironically trained them to execute. Vex reached him first, small jaws locking onto Ravik's weapon arm. 2 larger cubs tackled him from behind while others circled, cutting off escape routes. Stand down, Ravik roared, but his authority had evaporated. These weren't students anymore. They were a pack defending their own. Lyra watched in shock as the cubs systematically dismantled their instructor's ability to fight. They didn't kill him. Kryn cubs understood restraint, but they ensured he would never threaten her again. Claws found the tendons behind his knees. Teeth located pressure points that would cause pain without permanent damage. They worked with terrifying efficiency. When the Dominion guards finally arrived, they found Ravik unconscious on the floor, surrounded by a ring of cubs. Lyra sat in the center of that protective circle, untouched. Vex lay beside her, small head resting on her lap, eyes fixed on the doorway in case more threats emerged. The investigation lasted 3 days. Military officials tried to understand how an entire class of cubs had turned on their instructor. They reviewed footage, analyzed behavioral patterns, consulted xenopsychologists. They missed the obvious answer because they were looking for complex explanations. Lyra understood it before anyone else. She'd been reading about Kryn pack dynamics in the station library, trying to better integrate with her classmates. The Kryn were apex predators, yes, but they were also deeply social. They formed bonds. They protected weak pack members not out of pity, but because that's what packs did. And somewhere over the past months, without realizing it, she had become pack. The cubs had never seen her as weak prey. They saw her as a juvenile of a different species, Smaller, yes, but still theirs to protect. When Ravik attacked her, he didn't assault a student. He attacked a member of their pack, and pack protected pack regardless of species. The Council of Instructors found Ravik guilty of excessive force and stripped him of his rank. The cubs received no punishment. Dominion law was clear. A pack acting in defense of a member could not be held accountable, as such behavior was instinctual and therefore beyond legal jurisdiction. Lyra returned to the back row of training, but now she understood why the cubs had always let her sit there. It wasn't the safest position for her. It was the safest position for everyone else, because 30 predators sat between her and anything that might threaten her. Bex climbed over 2 larger cubs to sit beside her, scales clicking softly. The small cub bumped a scarred snout against her shoulder in the Kryn equivalent of a hug. Lyra smiled, her split lip protesting the movement. She finally understood what HFY meant in this context. It wasn't about humans being the strongest or the fastest. It was about humans being so adaptable that even predators adopted them into their packs. She sat in the back row, protected by monsters who had become family, and she knew that no instructor would dare touch her again.